We have a wonderful guest speaker, Hunter Thundercloud from the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin. So I did a little bit of kind of tweaking since Amber was going to talk about kind of the reservations and stuff in this area. I added a couple more slides with a little bit more information on the Washington State reservations and all of that. You know, obviously it's not lived experience. Obviously it was through research, but just an update on kind of the programming. One of the best things I learned in Peace Corps was be adaptable, because you never know what's going to happen. So I'm happy that everyone's here, showed up. Another thing I forgot to do last week, which also made me sad, because I was just so excited to get to the speakers. I forgot to tell my corny joke to kind of, you know, break the ice. So what do you call a chicken that studies calculus or algebra? A mathma-chicken. But that's a good one. It's a good one. All right, so let's get rocking and rolling. Get my readers on. All right, so we're going to start with the land acknowledgement. That the land on which we gather is within the ancestral territory of the Suquabs people, people of clear saltwater, the Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Squabs live in harmony with the lands and the waterways along Washington's central Salish seas, as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Squabs live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. For those of you who are new and those who are not new, this will be a repeat. So this is put on by Knowledge Connection Coalition, which is an organization I started. So it has 3 pillars. The first pillar is about knowledge sharing. So these Palestine Talks are under that kind of knowledge sharing pillar, where knowledge is either monopolized or controlled and confined to the privilege and should be shared. The second pillar is about community connections. So again, kind of why we're here. We're here to talk and kind of grow as a community. Through collective strength of community, people can find support and help each other throughout life. And then the third pillar is coalition building. So forging alliances among marginalized communities to collaborate on actionable solutions to unite and build a more equitable future. So what is this? This is a teach-in, which is a knowledge sharing event. Engaging in critical dialogue and community building through panel discussions and interactive changes. Why am I doing? Why is this? Why is Knowledge Connection Coalition a thing? To empower individuals to become more advocates of change, or advocates and agents of change, and to serve as a strategy for raising awareness, promoting knowledge sharing, and mobilizing action on pressing issues. So the biggest thing is I do my best to focus these more on, you know, facts and lived experiences. Obviously, as a Palestinian American, I have my own thoughts and biases that I try to do my best to keep out of here, but I am human. So, you know, really making sure that the knowledge sharing is people sharing lived experiences. All right, so I actually did not prepare. Claire, could you do me a favor? Can you pass out note cards and pens to everyone? So I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes. Instead of kind of turning to your neighbor, I'm trying to get more information on, you know, maybe future information. If you can write on the front of your card your why. So if you've been here before, why did you come back? If you're new, why did you come? And why is this important to you? So if we can write those, this also helps me again. One of the topics in my humanitarian course last week was the nonprofit industrial complex, and they love data. So this is going to really also help with data. I'm writing some grants to help continue to fund. As much as I love doing this, it is very expensive. So I will be using some of the data to show kind of like what people are getting from the beginning and then what they're learning at the end. Thank you, Claire. You're so great. So yeah, let's do about 2 to 3 minutes. And just kind of write your why. Why did you come, or why did you come back, and why is this important to you? I wonder where those symbols are. All right, let's rock and roll. I had chimes last time, which I left them when I ran out of my house today. So you'll just have to hear me say. And if you're still writing, that's totally okay. Ooh, I like that. Thanks for chiming for me. That was perfect timing. Perfect timing. No, you're fine. Okay, so again, for those who have been here, this will be a repeat. For those who haven't, you'll learn something. So we started at 6. We'll be done with the presentation at 7:30, and we must all be cleaned up and out of here by 8. As you can see, we have wonderful Lauren back there with Poppies of Palestine. So one of the things I'll ask is, if you do have conversations and you want to keep talking with someone, please move to that area in the kitchen, because we need to reset this up as it is a co-working space for tomorrow. So at 7:30, we'll just have everyone kind of shift over there. If you need to leave, that's totally fine as well. So our structure is, I'll do housekeeping, which I'm doing now. We'll talk a little bit about our previous talk recap and lesson learned. I'm going to do some word clarifications today. I don't really like definitions. I just like to say it's a clarification on what the words are. Some information on Palestine as it pertains to the topic. So today's topic is the parallels between the colonization of the U.S. and the Palestinian people, the natives in the U.S. and the Palestinian people. I'll introduce the panel speakers. I still have a slide for the previous panel speakers, because I still want to acknowledge the information I was going to share when she was here. And then we're going to get into talking with Hunter. And then afterwards, I'll leave some time open for Q&A, for community discussion. Please feel free to help yourself to snacks and water in the back. If you need to go to the bathroom, they're out the door in the hallway. And then I like to end every teach-in with action tools. I'm very big on let's not just constantly talk about things. So these will be little action tools that we can do in our daily lives. Whether you're a giant activist, whether you do small actions, planting one seed is great. And then I'll talk about the upcoming events, any community announcements. So if anyone here has an announcement on any events that they're running or going to, I'll open the floor up to those who would like to share that as well. And then again, commingling, community discussions, and cleanup. All right, so for our ground rules, I need to repeat these every week because it is really important. So this is human, not political or religious. If you've been to the last two, the first one was about deciding the vote, and the second one was about religion. This situation in Palestine, unfortunately, pretty much most of the things in our world are rooted in politics. Colonization originally was kind of rooted in the U.S. in Christianity and using we have to kind of spread our word. So. What I mean by this is I'm not here to make any political statements. I'm not here to make any religious statements. This is a human rights. Palestine is a human rights issue. It's about people that are not being allowed to live in their land, and they are being systematically ethnically cleansed. So that's that clarity on that. So this is a safe space. I want it to be open for everybody, no matter kind of what your view on this. This is planting the seeds for your own perspectives. Calm conversations only. Knock on wood, we haven't had any issues. We had a nice heated debate, the second one, but it didn't turn into anything. I am from the East Coast. If it gets rowdy, I am okay kicking people out. But this crowd looks pretty chill, so I'm not too worried about it. No question is stupid, so we're here to learn. There's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of propaganda. So if you have a question of something you heard, please feel free to ask it. We're here to share our knowledge on it. And so that comes to the second one, that intentions are everything and education is easy. So if you come saying, I heard this, or, in kind of a humble wanting to learn manner, great. Your intention is what matters. Participation is really important. So I'm going to be having a conversation typically with the panel speakers. And then afterwards, it's, about community discussion, engaging, asking questions. And that's all about the community building part of this. Action items are the goal. Like I said, I want everyone to leave with, I have 6 action items at the end. You can pick and choose any of them. You can do all of them. And then this is for everyone. So, I'm not here to say you can't come if you are, even if you're a Zionist, that's, come to learn if you're going to engage in a conversation. So I want this to be sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe. Okay. Why am I up here? So, for those of you who don't know, I'm Palestinian American. These are my grandparents up here. These are all taken in Ramallah, the Old Country, and Jerusalem. So, this is my reason why, because I'm trying to do some intergenerational trauma healing. The trauma of what happened in my family, they left during the first Nakba. Prevented me from knowing my ancestry. Actually, for those of you who don't know, I didn't know I was Palestinian until I was 27. And so, this is part of learning and healing about Palestine and kind of things for me too. And so tonight's topic is really important to me because I went to the Peace Corps, which is a whole other level of colonization, but I went to the Peace Corps in 2014 and I worked with my first, I had kind of a first introduction to an indigenous tribe that still lived very traditionally with the land. And I kind of saw all these different, they would take me around the area and I really saw what the effects of colonialism were. There was this one where they took me by this abandoned structure and I was like, oh, what's that? And they're like, oh, that was a USAID project. They tried to come down and tell us we needed to do this, and they built it, but no one used it because, we're struggling with running water in our house. I started really seeing what colonialism does, and so it started to become really important to me. And so learning and understanding ingrained colonialism in our lives is the first step towards decolonization. And so, we hear these words, decolonization. What does that mean? What does colonized mind mean? We won't have enough time to get really deep into that, but hopefully today you'll kind of get an understanding of, what the basics of colonization is, what does it look like, and what are the effects on the people that are colonized. So we need to collectively understand and move towards decolonizing the way we think, live, and move in this world. So again, with any major changes, it needs to be a collective action. And it starts with us knowing ourselves and learning from ourselves. And then this is really important. It's about spreading the seeds of understanding. One of the things I learned in Peace Corps is if one person learns something, or I learned way more than probably they did, but if someone got one thing, it planted a seed for generations. And so that's what I'm doing here. Y'all could leave and just not take anything from it, or one person does and one person says one thing to another person. So that's the important thing to me. All right, so for those of you who missed last month, it was a beautiful conversation. The video is up on my website. If you want to watch it, you can kind of skip through the first bits if you want. You could watch just the panel speakers, but it was beautiful. Nadia over there was one of our amazing panel speakers. And so kind of the biggest takeaways we got from this, a lot of the stuff that is happening in, the media and kind of around this it's kind of like a he said, she said, like, oh no, well this is how it happened, or this is how it happened. The biggest thing here is that lived experiences are the most factual information that you can get. So last month, Nadia shared her experience of traveling as a Muslim woman in Panama through the IDF checkpoint. I'm not in Panama, sorry, Palestine. Through IDF checkpoints, we talked with Dee, who's a Jewish American woman, and her lived experiences on kind of the uphill battle of, standing up for Palestinians as a Jewish American, and so no one can tell you that your lived experiences is not factual, because it's a lived experience. And that's why I really try to focus on that here. So one of the biggest important takeaways is Islamophobia is a real threat to Muslims. It is getting worse in the United States. If one of the candidates wins, it will get even worse. So it is a real thing, whether people think it or not. If you don't experience it and you don't think it is a real thing, that's called privilege, right? I'm not Muslim. I've never had Islamophobia against me, but that doesn't mean it's not real, right? And anti-Semitism is real. On the second talk, and there's still pamphlets in the back. One of the problems right now is that a lot of rhetoric is conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, right? So if you don't believe what Israel's doing right, if you're criticizing Israel, you're an anti-Semite. The pamphlet in the back about anti-Semitism is taken from a website that was created by Jewish rabbis to talk about the differences between true anti-Semitism and what people are trying to say, pro-Palestinian rhetoric is. So I suggest you're more than welcome to take one with you. But anti-Semitism is real, and so this conflict is making, these both of these awful things just even ramped up more. Negative treatment of Muslims in Palestine and the U.S. is real, as Nadia shared both of her experiences as a Muslim in the U.S. and in Palestine. Jewish people speaking out for Palestine do face discrimination by Zionist Jews. I shared a clip of Israelism, the movie, documentary. If you have not had a chance to watch it, it's amazing. And so I was not able, that part of the clip is not on the video because of copyright issues. But I did put the timing that I put the clip down in the notes of the video. Sorry, I'm not very literate on the video stuff, in the subnotes or something. And then the situation in Palestine is not about religion. A lot of people are trying to say it's Muslims versus Jews. It is not that. It is definitely about colonialism. which is what we're going to talk about today. So, let's start with imperialism. So imperialism is the creation of an empire by conquering another state's land or another nation's land, one country taking over another country or region by force or coercion. It doesn't necessarily have to be by this physically, but it can be economically, such as, the British Empire. We've heard about the British Empire. It's an imperialist empire. So colonialism is part of imperialism, and that's the act of dominating a nation, one nation, by acquiring or maintaining full or partial political control over the sovereign nation. So U.S. is a colonizing place, so is the British Empire, and Israel is, there's a lot of colonizing countries out there, but these are big players to bring up. So there's different types of colonialism. So there's an internal colonialism, which is internal colonialism is where a powerful group in society controls a weaker group internally. So that goes with, for example, the wealthy 1% of the U.S. is part of internal colonialism. The white patriarchy is part of internal colonialism. Different levels of the strata of colonialism of people that are marginalized, that's internal. So colonialism within a colonized state. So there's surrogate colonialism, which is when a ruling power supports and encourages a nation to take over another nation. So that is right now what the U.S. is doing with Israel, giving them bombs and funding the genocide. So right now the U.S. is being a surrogate because they haven't yet sent U.S. troops over. However, there are a lot of U.S. Jewish citizens that are over fighting in the IDF. So part of that is supporting that power to take over Palestine. Settler colonialism, which we've been hearing a lot in regards to specifically Palestine, but this is something in the U.S., is when another country settles in another. So when the British came over and made the U.S. and settled and kicked natives out, that is settler colonialism. That is what's happening really badly, actually, right now in the West Bank. A lot of the settlers are knocking down, even in East Jerusalem, where it is deemed as a Palestinian protected area. They had just knocked down a bunch of apartments of Palestinians to build for Israeli settlers, which a lot of them are good old U.S. Americans going over to do that. So that's a settler, British, like I said, British coming to the U.S. and Israeli and Palestine. Exploitation colonialism. A powerful country wants to exploit a weaker nations for labor, natural resources, and other items by force. You see this all over the world. You see it in Africa. Again, I just go back to British powers, U.S. powers. It's again really just exploiting the area, exploiting for resources. I didn't put this on here, but I'm going to add another one: neo-colonialism, which is the continuing dominance and dependence of a foreign national colonized region on its colonizers. So it's a perpetuation of colonized people within that system. So it creates this cycle. It's a newer form of colonialism. It's happening now. So neocolonialism would be, again, development of capitalism to continue to exploit colonized people, and then colonized people participating in exploiting other colonized people. So it's a continuing cycle. So this is just an example, if you can see. There are a lot of people that don't want to necessarily believe, if you're not up and keen on U.S. history of colonization, you can kind of see here all the interventions. So they call them interventions. So a lot of U.S. used to do a lot of different coups. They would send the CIA. They would do a lot of different things. So you can see here all the different areas that the U.S. had interventions in the years. So like in 1865 to 1917, it was very big in Latin America and the Caribbean. And then, in 1946 to 89, it was in East Asia and the Pacific, Europe and Central Asia. So the U.S. has been poking around in people's businesses for a really long time. So this is just kind of a graph, and all of this information will be uploaded into the Google Drive folder, as much as I need to get off of Google, to share with everyone. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but you can see in the middle, a lot of this starts with racism, right? So when someone comes and settles, it's because they think, the biggest thing was when they came to the U.S., these poor savages, we need to give them culture and teach them how to not be savages, right? That starts with racism, right? You think that another race or color, you're better than them. And then it starts with, but it's okay if we kill them because we're dehumanizing them. They're not the same as us. This is exactly what's happening in Palestine to Palestinians. They're not the same as us. So then if they're not the same, they don't have sovereignty. So, this is not their land. They're not people. And then, we'll take their land. It's okay. They're not people. And it goes to the settler colonialism, and then it goes all the way back up. They take the territory. They appropriate the land. We saw in the U.S., using slaves. And then, it secures white property, and it goes back to racism. So this will be up, but this is, a lot of colonialism is rooted in racism. So again, I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but 3 aspects to remember about settler colonialism: that it's a structure. It's not just a one-time thing. It's a building of a structure. So it's taken the U.S. to get to where we are over, tons and tons, thousands of years, hundreds of years. Brain Thursday, not working. So the second one is the elimination of the people, right? So if you want to come settle, you got to get rid of the people that are already living there. So that's the second aspect. And then the third aspect, and this is one of the things that the U.S. settlers say, and this is one of the things you hear from Israeli settlers is, but we have to do this because, it's for our safety. The U.S. would say, well, the natives are savages, and if we don't kill them or if we don't do this, they're gonna get us first. They're gonna kill us first. And so there's this fear of natives that creates this rhetoric of being okay of like killing and settling, and that's the same with the Palestinians. Is if we don't do this, we're not safe. As Jewish people. So that's big 3 aspects of this colonial settlerism that has to come rooted in racism, which, is that hierarchy. Okay, so you're gonna have to bear with me on some technical. I am not a huge fan of TikTok. I'm not on it, but this is an amazing video. So we're TikTok.
Why are many Native people in the U.S. so invested in the Palestinian struggle?
They are continuing to go through what we have been going through for over 500 years, an illegal occupation on our own land.
Both people's lands were forcibly taken by settlers, but there's a lot more to it than that. Just listen to Jessica Dillon, who isn't indigenous but is an expert in settler colonial studies.
These projects rely on the concept of terra nullius, which is empty lands, the idea that there are no people that exist on these lands, that they're available for the taking. In fact, they're granted to people that are chosen through divine intervention.
Colonization in the U.S. was justified under the idea of manifest destiny, while in Israel it's been justified under Zionism. These aren't identical concepts, but they each served as the rationale for the violent displacement of indigenous people that took place in both lands. Today, the U.S. has taken 98% of what was once indigenous land, with the remainder left for reservations. Compare that to Israel, which has 85% of Palestinian land, with the remainder under military occupation.
Settlers come to stay. They come with the intent of destroying the original inhabitants and their homelands and replacing it with a new society.
Similar tactics were also used in each colonial effort. During the 1948 Nakba, or catastrophe, at least 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes. And one way Zionist militias did this was by poisoning wells in the villages. Many Palestinians fled with just the clothes on their back, clutching onto keys for the home they would never return to. In the Americas, about 90% of the indigenous population died from 1492 to 1600. And during the Trail of Tears in the 1800s, colonists forcibly marched about 60,000 indigenous people to a distant reservation, with thousands dying along the way. When you look at what Israel is doing to Gaza today, Jaskiran points out more similarities.
What is going through your mind as you're watching the news unfold in Palestine?
The kind of warfare that's being waged against Palestinian people in Gaza around the deprivation of water, of food, of fuel. These are the same tactics of starvation, of displacement that were used that allow for the Trail of Tears to happen, for thousands of indigenous peoples to be led by the U.S. Army from their homelands westward in the United States. Similarly, in Palestine, you have thousands of people that are displaced, that become refugees in their own homelands because of the Nakba in order to build Israeli settlements.
With such strong parallels between their struggles, many indigenous activists and Palestinians have stood together in solidarity for decades. In 2016, Palestinian activists protested with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe in North Dakota against the Dakota Access Pipeline. When Israeli violence against Palestinians has flared up periodically, Native people have come out to defend them, time and time again. During Israel's ongoing bombardment of Gaza, we've seen indigenous communities supporting Palestinians in protests around the world.
All right. I like when other people can say it better than me. So this is just an example. And again, I love when other people, this is all credit to they're on here. But you can see kind of the Palestine and the occupation, the shrinking of the lands, and the same here, same people, same agenda. And that's the biggest thing is the U.S., one of the original colonizers, is teaching, a newer aged colonizer. So you can kind of see at the very top, what is it on your guys' left? They're full, right? And they just start shrinking as they move over here. And this is only 2006. That only goes to 2006. So this is just kind of an example to get that comparison of how much land has been taken by taken from both natives and Palestinians. Okay, also, this is not made. I don't know if anyone knows what Prezi is. It's amazing. Stephanie Barriga made this in 2015, and it's amazing. So one of the biggest things is, Nope. Hold, please. One of the biggest things is, and that's, what Hunter's going to help share with us, is what...
Never seen such a useful chainsaw.
Ad.
If you haven't bought it yet, please take 2 minutes.
Capitalism.
I want one.
Part, right? Okay, so this is Prezi. I did not make this, like I said, but it's awesome. So we're going to go back. The effects of colonization is huge. Obviously, there hasn't been studies yet on the effects of colonization of Palestinians because they are still in active occupation and active colonization. However, there has been obviously history and studies of Native Americans and the effects of that. To me, that's the saddest, scariest part of all of this. What are these effects? What are these effects of these kids that are growing up hearing bombs and, losing limbs? And it's, the future of Palestinians is a long road of recovery. So this was made. It's awesome. So the effects of Native Americans, the first one are diseases, right? So I don't know if you've heard about the blankets with the smallpox on them. A lot of diseases came over that they didn't have immune systems for. And so a lot of them were healthy, but then they came, and that's where a lot of the deaths did come from, was, the settlers didn't necessarily have to wipe them out with guns. They could just give them blankets of smallpox. So that's a big thing is, and especially in Palestine where there's no clean water and there's no, there's constant rubble and dust that is going to create all these other sicknesses. I like it goes even deeper. So it adds, warfare was a huge effect. Oh, that's the dog downstairs. He gets
He doesn't like being left alone.
there. Emotional anxiety, separation anxiety. So Europeans obviously had a different kind of warfare. There's no mercy on civilians, and it was intended to wipe out the population. One of the biggest things that had just dropped in the news was Israel has admitted to the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. The Hannibal Directive, and please look this up because I'm not going to explain it as well, but it's basically like, that they would rather kill their own citizens than have their citizens be taken hostage. So a lot of the Israelis that were killed on October 7th were killed by Israeli soldiers. And what they were saying, a lot of the reasoning behind that is they don't want to have to exchange hostages. They say they don't want that Israelis have to be stuck in Palestinian jails and tortured and basically all the things Israelis are doing to Palestinians. So the Hannibal Directive basically allows the Israeli soldiers to kill their own civilians to make sure they kill the person taking them hostage, obviously, but they don't care if they kill their own civilians in that. And so look up the Hannibal Directive if you want a little bit more information. But as you can see, warfare is a huge effect of colonization. Nature's off balance. We obviously can see what colonizing the earth does with our global warming and our super hot temperatures. But the bison disappeared, being hunted, French wiped out. I didn't even know the French almost wiped out the beaver population. But the food supplies run scarce because, the natives, though they hunted and fished and all of that, there was a cyclical harmony that they worked. They didn't just kill all of the bison. They ate what they needed to, and it was this harmony. So when you have colonizers, it disrupts that balance. Well, we know land thieves. Manifest destiny led the colonies to say, okay, we deserve to go get land, right? It's in our destiny to settle this, which, we read about the Trail of Tears. And then relocation. So, a lot of indigenous were put on lands that they had never lived on. So they had to learn how to live in an area. So for example, like the Dene in Arizona, the Navajo, Arizona is not an inhabitable place. It is a dry desert with not a lot of food and water. So if you're an indigenous person, you might go there for a season if it's raining, but you're not settling there and living there. But now, because of this, they are forced. There are still places in the Navajo Nation that don't have running water in their houses. And it is 2024. So, you can see, and then reservations, again, they pick the worst lands. Sure, natives, we're not going to give you the fertile lands. You go take these. Which is what's happening in Palestine. I mean, Nadia mentioned that last month was, the open air prisons are because they're right by fertile land, and they wall Palestinians into this little area so then Israelis can go, farm and use the good lands. Cultural genocide. There's a lot of Native Americans that aren't around anymore. A lot of them are losing their language. Hunter can talk to that with with the Ho-Chunk Nation. His mom was really involved in a language program. And so, again, they did that during the boarding schools, cutting off the hair, don't talk the language. And Palestinians are afraid, to show who they are. Modern Native Americans, 1% of the U.S. population has Native American descent. There's a lot of mixed blood, but they were forced to assimilate. So again, there's, I used to joke with Hunter, and he'll say, he was a city native for a while, and there's a lot of people who are disconnected from their cultures because of, assimilation or things like that. So it's real. I mean, I was assimilated. My family, the only Palestinian thing we were allowed to do, which was great, was the food. We were really big into the food, but none of the culture, none of the dances, none of the dress. And so, it's all about assimilating into the colonized culture. And then we're going to talk about cultural appropriation. I don't know if you've seen these. I used to go to a lot of, I used to help organize festivals, hippie festivals. And I don't know how many white hippie dudes or white hippie chicks that I'd have to go tell them to take they would wear headdresses, native headdresses or bonnets while they're out, doing a bunch of drugs and dancing to EDM music. Like, those bonnets, are sacred. The headdresses for Native Americans are sacred. And there's a lot of cultural appropriation, not with just Native Americans, but a lot. So, but, there's a lot of movies, like, but you watch real old movies with Native people, most of the time they're played by Italians or, but they're always kind of that scapegoat. So, and then this is really important. Native American women are 2.5 times more likely to be raped than the average U.S. women in the U.S. And there is a big movement of Native women, stolen Native women, and it's just not talked about. So definitely a big effect. And then those are all of their works cited, which you will have access to this. And then I think it's time for me to stop talking soon. I hope. Oh, okay. These are the extra ones. We'll zip through these. We're good on time. I want to make sure we're. So actually, let's. I'll post these so you all can read. I actually want to get Hunter on so we can start talking. But I basically wanted to kind of just show this is Washington. That was the original in 1854, one of the first census. So you could see all the different tribes in that top one. Then you can see in 1890 how they've gotten smaller. And then this one, let me move this. To this day, this is kind of current. There's not that many Native reservations here. So you'll be able to read this. I'll put it on a PDF. This is talking about treaties. That's how it happened. And then this is the Puget Sound. These are all the reservations within the area that we all live in. So you can see the Port Gamble Slalom. You'll learn that there's different slalom bands. So there's the Port Gamble Slalom, the Jamestown Slalom, and the Lower Ella Slalom. That is also in the back. I printed out Port Gamble Slalom Tribe's history from their website, so you can take those. You can also visit their website. And now we are going to go and talk with Hunter. So I'm going to skip through this. You'll get to see this. I want to talk a little bit about Ho-Chunk. So a lot of the natives here are on reservations, right? So reservations are tribal trusts that are owned and run by the natives themselves. And so Hunter's nation, the Ho-Chunk Nation, they're the people of the sacred voice. It was interesting because when I was writing up about the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Port Gamble, they both were talking about how they both had to be resilient, right? A lot of Native tribes had to be resilient. So these terms come from that resiliency. So they were big fishermen. They're from Wisconsin, so they're big fishermen and a lot of dried corn and beans, dugout canoes. Their first colonizer contact was in 1634. So if I go back here, you can see the first colonizer contact for the Port Gamble Slalom was in 1853. So the people, and even the tribes that are more east of the Midwest, their first contact was even earlier. So, the Western tribes kind of were, quote unquote, lucky to have more time. They weren't as colonized as early because it took the settlers longer to come out west. So the Ho-Chunk Nation is not on a reservation. It's a single continuous land. It's not like a single continuous land base. The Ho-Chunk, both the Port Gamble Slalom and the Ho-Chunk at one point tried to buy back the lands that were stolen. The Port Gamble Slalom got lucky enough, quote unquote lucky enough, to work out a treaty where they were given a reservation. The Ho-Chunk has purchased their land. So they own land in 14 counties in Wisconsin and land in Illinois. And then they are governed by 4 branches of government. executive, legislative, judicial, and then a general council. And the Port Gamble is governed by a 6-person tribal council. So the original guest speaker was the chairwoman, which is, basically the president of the tribal council. All right, sweet. Well, do you want to give a little bit about yourself? I will turn this up full volume.
My name is Hunter Thundercloud. I'm 38 years old. I'm a small business owner. I'm a sun dancer. I have been sober 5.5 years. Yeah, I think that's most of it. I mean, I'm involved in my culture. I do live in Arizona. I moved here 7 years ago to come to rehab. So I've spent a lot of time relearning, I guess, traditional culture. It's been a big focus of mine, finding spirituality and traditional roots. But yeah, my parents or my family's been really involved in our tribe always. My mom started a child care center for 6-month to 4-year-olds to learn Ho-Chunk during the day. So they all speak. They have teachers there that also teach students. So it's a system where you have maybe a 60, 70-year-old or older who's teaching the language to someone that's in their 20s and then also the babies. But the goal is to bring back our language. I mean, any of the parents that send their kids to the daycare have to take classes so they're able to speak at home. And one of the reasons we do that is, language is part of one of the main focal parts of culture. It allows you to keep your traditions and remember how we think of the world. When they talk about indigenous languages, they say 70% of the language are verbs. And it's because when we view things, everything is living. Whether it's the mountains, the trees, rocks, it's all something we consider our relatives. When we don't objectify things, it allows us to maybe live in peace and harmony, and we don't exploit it the same way. And we're trying to bring back that ideology. I mean, we've lost it because of things like boarding schools and dominant culture. So our tribe is really spending a lot of money to try to re-educate people, which I believe it's more of a human thing than just for our tribe. If we think of the world as something that we're related to, we're less likely to exploit it and maybe, live with less consumerism. Because really that's, I think, the downfall of most things. We take more than we need. But that's a little intro of who I am. I'm trying to start a drug and alcohol rehab that's Native focused. I have 2 businesses, and we hire people that are in recovery. And almost all of my managers have been sober longer than 5 to, our manager's been sober for 30 years. And my managers have been sober for 5 years. So we really work in a community that's focused around sobriety. We all sweat together. So we have spiritual practices that are integrated into our work life and our family life. So we're trying to create almost a village. We have multiple houses on the property. We have about 12 people that live there, family, kids. So we're trying to bring back a way to live in community. Lots of people, I think, talk about it, but the action is more difficult. You know, even right now, we're having like a lull in our family. You know, it's a little stressful because there are so many people living there. But I think to learn to live in older ways, you know, we say we're in the era of the Heoka, which means that we're walking backwards, but also we're looking into the past. So we're still moving forward and trying to reintegrate values from the past. It doesn't mean that we have to get rid of modern technology, but maybe we reintroduce some of the values of our old traditions. Um, so that's, it's a little bit about me.
Good intro. Why did you agree to come speak today?
Well, I'm friends with Whitney, but also, you know, understanding cultures that have been almost, I mean, understanding genocide and realizing that it's a part of a lot of dominant culture is an important conversation, because until maybe people realize how they're involved or maybe things we can do, it's a good conversation to have. Um, you know, it's a human problem. You know, even though we're talking about Palestine and Native Americans, when we do sweat, we say Mitaku essay, which means we're all related, which means everything. And we're trying to bring back that human perspective. So I think being involved in conversations like this are really important. And I think lots of people feel helpless and they want to be involved. So I think everyone that's here, I'm grateful. So.
Thank you. Can we dive a little bit more into kind of Ho-Chunk? Can you give a little bit of information, because it's a little fascinating on how it's Winnebago and how you kind of split off, and living in different kind of not having a reservation, how that kind of affects things, how Ho-Chunk kind of deals with people in Wisconsin versus people through the original Winnebago tribe. Can you kind of talk a little bit to that?
So we were moved, I want to say in the 1830s, our first time to Nebraska.
That is too.
And every time, so when everyone was moving west, Ho-Chunk Nation got pushed west also. Half of our tribe moved back to Wisconsin 5 times. So we were relocated 5 times. And half of our tribe kept going back. So in 1994, the Ho-Chunk Nation decided to rename themselves from Winnebago to Ho-Chunk. And because we created casinos, and we were going to start offering per capita, which are basically dividends from the business we have created. We decided to offer to the Winnebagos, you can either come home and be part of the original tribe, Ho-Chunk, or stay in Nebraska and be considered Winnebago. We split ourselves in half when I look at it. Like we decided that it was more important to keep money within our tribe than to help support our other half of the tribe, because they decided not to come home. Which I think is an awful thing. Because blood quantum is an issue with most Native American tribes. It's one of the things that is killing us. You're only allowed to be one tribe. So even if you're 100%, you could be 4 different tribes, a quarter each. You would only be considered one tribe. And usually people pick the tribe that has financial benefits. And that's because, life is hard. And assistance is always beneficial to families. And in our tribe, if you're an eighth, you're not considered Ho-Chunk. You wouldn't be tribally enrolled. So, these are policies that the government have created and tribes have accepted and put into their own legislation and own constitutions, which it's killing us. We're disappearing. Our tribe is 7,500 some people. One of the things we talked about recently was anyone that was before 1990 and was a member, we would switch our blood quantums to 100%. And I know there's a lot of discussions about things like that in other tribes. And it becomes what makes us Native. I think that's a big question. We have racism within our own tribes. If you look European, Caucasian, you look Black, you're not maybe considered Native the same way. And we see that in ceremony. So there's certain sun dances. If you're white, you're not allowed to Sundance. We see that within even my Ho-Chunks have something called the medicine lodge. If your partner is non-Native, they're not able to be involved. And I think these practices allow ourselves to disappear. And the way even our tribe, we have our legislation, we have, we're considered a wealthy tribe. We're probably in the top 25 wealthiest tribes in the country. And I think that's also because we didn't have a reservation when we went back to Wisconsin. We had members that figured ways out to become business people and figured out how to work within the world because they needed to. Because we were always a part of dominant culture because we didn't have reservations. We lived in small town America and we were cohabitating. But, because of that, we also were trying to assimilate, which means we lost a lot of our culture. My grandma went to boarding school and she wasn't allowed to learn her language, even though she was a native-born speaker. She passed away last February. She's 99. But our tribe has 400 speakers left. Sorry, I get a little emotional when we talk about these things because, it's almost like you're watching yourself disappear. And even though it may be not the same as genocide in Palestine, it's still something that our country does, politically. And I think most natives feel it. I think we think about who we should marry, who we should have kids with. It's almost like it's not an option. If you don't marry within your tribe, are you part of the problem because you're allowing your history to die? So, but yeah, I mean, I think the whole Trump government is it's progressive. It's trying to figure out ways to um, stay alive. Um, it is it's it spends a lot of money in programs that are cultural, but I don't think a lot of Native American tribes are aligned with the way they make money because it's all revolved around casinos. And we saw that during COVID. Any tribe where most of their income came from casinos, their programs would shut down because they weren't able to afford to sustain themselves. Um, and I'm a big believer that natives should own more businesses and figure out how to um, create sustainable societies, and be involved and change the way we value things. I mean, we have a lot of capital to maybe get involved with things to change things. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. And I'll ask this last question so I can leave a little bit time for people to ask you questions if they have. Can you speak to the effects of colonization on Native peoples in regard to drug and alcohol addiction, and kind of what you've experienced and what you've seen, living in Wisconsin and kind of with your own tribe, but also in Arizona with the different nations and tribes that you work with there?
I mean, I say, statistically, Native Americans, 50% of us are alcoholics or drug addicts. We also have one of the highest sober rates for ethnic populations. And that's because so many people do get sober at some point, which I think lots of people don't talk about that. They focus on the amount of addiction there is. But yeah, generational trauma is definitely a huge part of addiction. I'm also involved in 12-step programs, and a lot of the concepts are, your addiction is trying to fill a void. And one of the only things that can fill that is spirituality, maybe a higher power. When we lost our traditional values, I'm involved in SWAT, but Native Americans weren't able to practice our ceremonies. It was illegal before 1978. And that's why you see things like Native American church, peyote meetings, they're intertwined with Christian values. And that's because it was a way to practice, our native teachings, but also, we would say they were Christian, which I know there are parts of the U.S. that are NAC, and they're starting to call themselves peyote people instead of Native American church. And they're taking out Christianity and going back to more traditional things because we have that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, I work with lots of people in recovery. My goal is to start a rehab for Native Americans. Recently, IHS was paying almost in Arizona, we have access, which is state insurance. And the rate for a Client going into rehab is about $6,400 a month. And IHS had something similar, and they were paying out close to $15,000 a month. Arizona was all over the news, I want to say 6 months ago, because what was happening is the payout was so much more. All these native sober living and rehabs popped up all over Arizona. And they weren't treating people. They were bringing them into these facilities and allowing them to use drugs and alcohol. They were driving up to the Navajo reservation. They were going to the TO reservation, and they were looking for native people that were alcoholics or drug addicts and bringing them to Phoenix. And, they basically were exploited because of who they were for the gain of profit. And now the homeless, because that got shut down, we closed all the rehabs. And any native that was in rehabs at that time in Phoenix basically were kicked out. And now the homeless population in Phoenix is skyrocketing. People on the Navajo reservation have lost so many family members, they don't know where they are. There's no contact. It's 120 degrees right now in Phoenix, and there's all these native people that were basically taken and coerced to come to Phoenix for, change. And I think it's because, there isn't a reservation even on the Navajo reservation. We aren't setting up our own infrastructures. And we've been dealing with alcoholism for, I really think it skyrocketed after, all the Carlisle schools, all the boarding schools, because we lost our spirituality. We lost our land. To be a native person, on your own land where you have nothing and you see the world, being developed, you see, no opportunity, and you've lost your language, your spirituality, your culture. There's a lot of trauma that has to be repaired. And, I think this is a time where we can start that, but it's going to take a long time. And, I don't know if we have lots of time. And that's maybe what I was talking about with even blood quantum, or us being considered native will disappear in 4 generations if we are with non-members of our tribe. So it's a complicated subject, because it's like, how do we heal people if our tribes don't do it? When I was doing research on how many privately owned native rehabs are around the country, there was less than 20. I live in Prescott, Arizona, and it used to be the 3rd largest rehab town in the country, and there's 120 rehabs and sober living. Not one's owned by a native person. The amount of money that we give away because we're not willing to take care of ourselves is it's significant. And my vision would be to create a long-term rehab where we teach people how to have vocational skills and learn how to run businesses, so they're able to go home and become leaders and help change our communities. So I don't know if that answered your question either, but addiction's hard. I think every male in my family on my native side is an alcoholic. And the women have had to hold up our family. The matriarchs are always there. We don't have a patriarch, even though my mom has 9 brothers and sisters. She has 4 brothers, and none of them have ever been able to take that role in her family. Um, and so
one of the tactics of colonizers was to give alcohol to Native men to make them more passive, to, kind of drug them so they're more easily kind of, taken down and colonized. So it's, it goes back to the colonization, and, really having to deal with these things. A lot of drug and alcohol addiction stems from, again, this hole or not being able to deal with with traumas that we have. And, Native Americans go really deep and very long. Palestinians go, a lot of people have traumas, but, for me, living and working in the community with Hunter and really seeing, a lot of it is so deep, and dealing with my own traumas, it's hard. It's really hard. And so I struggle to see what's going to be the effects in the future to the Palestinian people and to the Native Americans, we'll take, about 5-ish minutes. If anyone has specific questions or want to know a little more, I know it was kind of low and garbled. This is also recorded, so it will be up on video to watch again. I was watching the subtitles, and it used a lot of funny words that I did not say. But that's okay. Tamuel's great and helps with subtitles too. So we'll make sure if you weren't able to hear it. But does anyone have specific question for Hunter, or anything that he discussed today? Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I just want to so appreciate you speaking to us, and how hard it is. I don't know what else to say, but my deep appreciation that you're so openly with us. And I have thought colonization is, I think, the most violent thing in the world, because it does destroy cultures, and community is what will help each of us in our different groups together and apart to survive. And I sure hope the Ho-Chunk do survive. And we got dark days ahead for sure, but we need to. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question and then potentially a comment. Do you have active social workers amongst your tribe?
Yes. Social work is one of those fields lots of Native Americans enter. Because I think people have been involved with them and they see that they can help. So we have lots of social workers in Native communities. And I think it's a great thing. But it's helpful, but I don't think it's a solution, because everything's so deep rooted in culture. It's almost like the family has to heal itself, and social workers have the ability to kind of do that. But also, lots of Native Americans are nervous about it, because so many kids were taken away. Yes, we have social workers, we do. But I don't know. Yeah, I wish we had other things besides social workers. I know lots of Native social workers. I wish we had business owners that were able to hire people and provide jobs. And I wish we had, medicine people. I wish we had farmers. Those are also ways to heal ourselves. Through the land, feeding ourselves, growing. We have, I think when we look at our Western view, social workers are our dominant culture's way of telling families how to raise themselves. But culturally, it's done by grain food, by language, by ceremony. Ceremony is probably one of the most important things for Native Americans. It connects us spiritually. It creates community. I mean, it allows us to, be ourselves in the most human way, the most vulnerable way. So,
to be clear, I don't necessarily think that the white way of social work is appropriate for Native Americans. I didn't mean to imply that. I more mean to make a ground clarification. Mm-hmm. I have a very good friend who is going into social work, and as part of his master's program, he went on a travel study into Portugal to look at how they treat addiction.
Oh, for sure.
Different. They look at addiction as a health issue. And social workers work with addicts more directly in a non-judgmental way. It is decriminalized, and they have good success. And I don't know if that's a connection you would like to have. If you would like to have someone go into Portugal or learn about what they do or their approach, and then marry it with your culture and allow for this air of non-judgment to really kind of bring your culture and your old ways into healing someone's internal hurt as well as their physical addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
I've done a lot of reading about Portugal, and like Gabriel Mate talks about him a lot. And Portugal, though, it was a cultural shift with their addiction, because 1% of their population were heroin addicts. So they created a cultural shift, and the U.S. has to do that also. I mean, we make addicts criminals. We make alcoholics criminals. I had 3 DUIs by the time I was 25, and I went to jail. I probably spent a year of my life in jail. And at the time, because I was in my addiction, I didn't think it was a big deal. I spent 9 months in jail, and I was like, I could do this every few years. It's a vacation from reality. I was able to read. I didn't have to wash dishes, cook, clean clothes. I just hung out, and it's really easy to become institutionalized. And yes, I a lot of my philosophy with rehabs would be a cultural shift within ourselves. I want to create leaders, and that's the reason why I feel like work is so important, because you have to make people have purpose in life. And the thing is, if you can give them jobs to go back into the community and feel like they're a part of it and they have something to offer, I think that's one of the ways. But yes, Portugal is a great example, but that was a cultural shift for everyone, and everyone was involved, because the connection with the amount of heroin addicts was dramatic. And we have the same thing with our opiate addiction here, but our policies haven't changed, even though most people know someone or friends of someone who's had dealt with opiates. So, okay, thank you. I didn't mean to like say Western, but yes, I think for me I have a different view on that.
Only sorry it wasn't a new thought.
Okay, yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Hunter, for coming and sharing and being vulnerable and honest. If you can see the rest of the presentation, you can log off, but your I will be sending your gift with Garrett, who is going to be arriving at my house in a couple hours. So he will bring you your keffiyeh, so you can rock it in Prescott, Arizona.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just don't get shot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Hunter. All right, I'm going to finish the last bit of the Nope, that one. All right, last bits. Okay, go away. Okay. All right, so our actions. So today we're going to be, one of our actions is contacting our reps. We know we're in elections. We know all that fun stuff is coming. A lot of things in Congress are happening, so please contact your reps. There's a link I can send for USCPR Action, which has an easy email that comes. You just click a button and it sends, you pick your state, and then it sends emails. You could send them every day. Vote informed. So we have primaries coming up in a couple of weeks in the in Washington. I do want to inform you all that Emily Randall has made her stance on Palestine very clear and has fired her campaign manager because she was saying some pro-Palestinian statements. And she has written to the Jewish Insider that she is 100% backing Israel and that they have the right to do what they are doing. So that is Emily Randall on the ticket. I am working on emails out to all of the federal candidates, so congressional and House and Senate, to all the congressional ones, to have them make a stance, give me their stance on Palestine. I will send that out once I get the information. And if they don't make a stance, I will also say that too.
I just want to say Hillary Franz, who is running against Emily Randall, has also come out totally in support of Israel.
Oh, so. Well, that's just peachy. Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you for that update. So vote informed. The second event we had, I sent out, there's the candidate scorecard. So you can go on, again, it's uscpraction.org, and they have a bunch of information on local candidates. So again, focusing really on the congressional ones because they're going to be making the major decisions in Congress for Washington state residents. Again, attend events. I'm going to turn off captions. Ooh. Where'd they go? Show meeting? Hide captions. Okay, I'm gonna stop share. Okay, does that work? Gotta love technology. Okay, so attend events. I will quickly run through the events that are later. So of course my little clicker's not working now. So understanding cultural appropriation, I'm going to send out part of the information. It's actually a really good article about what cultural appropriation is. So just really understanding what that is in our day-to-day lives. Again, checking ourselves, understanding our own biases, all of that wonderful stuff, and then boycotting. I will send out the BDS boycott list again. There's also an app called No Thanks. It's an awesome app. Download it. If you're at a store, you scan the barcode and it will tell you if the product or the manufacturers support Israel. So that is a great one. These are all the sources. Quick upcoming events. Here's all the wonderful weekly demonstrations. Please, if you're not on Janice's mailing list, she sends out all those the demonstrations that they're happening. The Kingston and Bainbridge ones are the ones that switch. Correct? They alternate. So getting on Janice's mailing list is awesome, so you'll know when there's these weekly demonstrations. On Sunday, this Sunday, the 22nd, the Kitsap Palestine Solidarity Coalition is going to be doing a Poppies and Peacekeeping event. It's going to be awesome. Poppy making at 5:30.
Monday.
It's Monday.
Oh, is it Monday then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So the 22nd is correct, just not the day. Okay, so Monday the 22nd, poppy making, and then de-escalation training. So de-escalation training is really great if you haven't been to it. I personally need it because I just like to rile up people. So if you can make that, it's at the Ground Zero for Nonviolent Action Center. Kitsap Pride Festival is this weekend, which is super duper awesome. I will be there volunteering. There are still volunteer options available if you're open. It's at the Kitsap County Fairgrounds Saturday starting at 2.
I was going to say the Kitsap Palestine Solidarity Coalition is going to be there, and it sounds like we'll probably be at the table of Posbo Pride. And
oh, cool.
So please come by there if you're there and come visit us. We have stickers and candy and all kinds of things.
And good information. A lot of good, a lot of good information. You guys have the really cool like cards and so yes, go visit the Kitsap Palestine Solidarity Coalition. And then another awesome thing next weekend is the Seattle Arab Fest. And the theme is Bridges to Palestine. So it's going to be really cool. They're going to bring in a lot of different Palestinian music and food and stuff. So if you can go, it is Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Armory Hall. There's also a list of some other events that you can scan and look at the website. And then next month we're going to have we're going to talk about building solidarity with other marginalized groups. Gabriela Ituarte is going to be here, Daryl Riley, and then Aiden. Here's Aiden. Aiden's going to come talk to us about the Chamorro, the Pacific Islander community. So it's going to be a really cool panel. I'm going to do way less talking. Thank the powers that be. So it's going to be a really good one. And Daryl is, if you haven't seen Daryl talk, he's spoken here before. He's a spitfire. So just be, sometimes he's offensive, but that's, he's not meaning to be. He's just being honest. And Gabriela is an amazing woman working with the Latino community in Bremerton. So we do have a little bit of time if you feel so inclined to write on your card something you learned, took away, any questions. I'm going to skip to the next. Go visit Lauren over there, Poppies for Palestine. She makes poppy-themed jewelry and uses the money to donate to the Palestine Children's Fund. Is that correct?
Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, yes.
Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. So anything you buy from her is going to be helping Palestinian children, which we all know need a lot of help. And then I have the za'atar and olive oil. The olive oil was donated from Allison at Volka's Mediterranean Market, and the za'atar is from Sam Spiva at Spiva Cooking. It's, if you pay for it, the donation just goes to pay for all of this. And then of course the stickers are here. And then if you're so inclined, you can scan this and just donate directly. And these are all the wonderful things that your donation covers. So thank you all so much for coming.
I'd like to announce one thing.
Yes.
If people didn't know that, at Daybreak Star is the powwow this weekend.
Okay.
Starting Friday, tomorrow, right?
Daybreak Star, which is across the water, right?
Yeah,
yes.
It's across the water.
Yeah. It's a great. I went to it last year. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's a big powwow.
Yeah. So yeah, go learn, attend events. Thank you so much all for coming. If you can write on your card what you learned, any actions you took away, you can just leave them on the back table and I will collect them when I clean up. And thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Nadia, for snapping some photos. Thanks, Lauren, for selling your awesome jewelry. Go support Lauren. And I think we're done, team. Good job. Go team.